Today is March 12th, 2022. Welcome back to Panda and History channel. Today we're going to talk about the Ukraine war and its president. From the beginning, the purpose of my channel is to learn from history and avoid disasters to human race. Let's always have sympathy for the entire humankind and put civilization continuity into perspective. Disclaimer first, as this may be unpleasant to someone. I'm against all wars. I'm against sacrificing any human lives for ugly and stupid political agendas. I strongly condemn the invasion of Russia to Ukraine. I'm against all lies and false information. To Ukraine, to Russians, to people of the world. All of below contents are from Western mainstream media outlets. It does not mean I am particularly fond of the mainstream media. This is to prevent attacks of false information. As Russia's invasion of Ukraine enters its third week, military and civilian casualties are mounting. But no one, not even the United Nations or the Ukrainian government, can provide an accurate count of how many people have been injured or killed. In this bloody war, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, a comedian who had no experience of politics, were elected less than 3 years ago, has suddenly emerged as a convincing war leader. This is exactly quote from BBC of description of the Ukraine president. At first, I'm so moved by his patriotism and heroic actions. So much hate to the dictator Putin. I'm so sad about the loss of Ukraine, as I am against socialism so deeply after seeing the history of China and Soviet Union. I admit I'm a sensitive man. I can't stand watching any of the killing scenes, nor people suffering that is circulating the news networks and social media. That's before I started to investigate this topic and understand more of Ukraine and Russia's history, geography, and most importantly, geopolitical conflicts with regard to Nato. Like I said, I got all my information from mainstream Western media. I have all links below my video in case you have doubts or questions. The more information I have, the more doubts about this war and this president I do have. My questions may not be comfortable for some people. If you are a faithful fan of Zelansky, you can close this video and look elsewhere. To understand today's situation in Ukraine, it certainly can't skip the NATO expansion. I just listened to Senator Bernie Sanders' speech in YouTube about the possible diplomacy in Ukraine. Remember, our goal is to stop the war, stop the killing, stop escalating and return peace to Ukraine, and remove the dark clouds of nuclear war over mankind. When I grow up in China, we have seen plenty of heroes in CCP. In the Sino-Japanese War, in the Civil War, in the Korean War. All of them were created by the CCP government propaganda machine. There's even a law in China now that if you question or doubt a hero, you can be censored or even put to jail. I am now a US citizen, but I sincerely hope my questions to the war hero Zelensky will not cause me to be censored or jailed. Still remember Aung San Suu Kyi from Myanmar? A democracy icon created by the Western powers? Now she has already fallen down to earth as Western countries have abandoned her. Or maybe we can say she has chosen to abandon the West for the sake of her nation. I don't think she is selfish or corrupt, and I don't think she doesn't understand human rights as she had her education in Britain. It's just she's not willing to play the cards dealt by the West. If I have time, I will certainly make a video of this legendary lady. I'm not drawing any conclusions for my viewers. I am only asking questions based on my thoughts, so please don't censor my video like Socialist China. The first question: did Zelensky know that Putin will invade Ukraine if Ukraine vows to join NATO? Has he done anything to prevent it? Ukraine former President Poroshenko signed the constitutional amendment committing the country to become a member of NATO and EU on February 19th of 2019. In December 17th, 2021, Russia presents detailed security demands to the West, including that NATO cease all military activities in Eastern Europe and Ukraine, and that the alliance never accept Ukraine or other former Soviet nations as members. Then, as early as Feb 12th, 2 weeks before the Russian invasion, US is evacuating its diplomats and troops in Ukraine and urging private American citizens to leave immediately, according to the State Department and Pentagon. According to the news report, Ukrainian officials, especially Zelansky, at odds with the US assessment of an imminent threat of weeks, were critical of the decision as they tried to project calm to a nation weary of 8 years of Russian aggression. Quote, "Today in the information space, there's too much information about deep, full-scale invasion from Russia," unquote. President Volodymyr Zelensky told reporters, quote, "The best friend of our enemy is panic in our country, and all that information which helps create only panic doesn't help us," unquote. It seems that the US already successfully assessed the situation and has warned Zelensky, but he refused to believe. At the same time, on multiple occasions, Biden reassured Zelensky that US will respond decisively if Russia invades. Decisively is an interesting word, but he has made clear US troops will not enter Ukraine to support its military or even to evacuate American citizens. Do we evaluate the president's performance on how his speech or his videos is inspiring? Or do we evaluate the president of keeping his country and people safe and prosperous? Basically, Zelensky is either unaware of the imminent war which US has already warned him and even showed him by evacuating their own citizens. If he so much want to join NATO, why does he not believe in NATO's analysis? As a president, what actions has he taken to mitigate and minimize the danger of war? What has he done to protect his country to avoid the war? In the famous Chinese ancient Art of War by Sun Tzu, a war is the last resort to the political crisis. The best strategy of warfare is to foil enemy strategy. Armed attacks will do great damage to both sides, so they should be avoided if at all possible. Looking through the news network, I couldn't find anything Zelensky has done to prevent this war, which happens on his own land. So he has miscalculated the situation and danger of war in spite of so many signs. There's also another possibility that he wants to fight this war on his land with the help of the West. But looking at the progression of the war and the damage to the country, I would say if that's the case, that decision is even worse than ignoring the danger. Second question. Why is he preventing men between 18 and 60 from leaving the country? Why is he asking civilians to fight a modern warfare with assault weapons? Zelensky said in one of his Twitter posts, quote, "We will give weapons to anyone who wants to defend the country. Be ready to support Ukraine in the squares of our cities," unquote. That's true, but he is giving weapons to anyone even if they don't want to defend the country. Ukraine already has a sizable army with 200,000 active personnel and 300,000 reservists, as well as paramilitary forces who are now being mobilized under the General Mobilization Decree. I don't deny some Ukrainians have felt compelled to stay and potentially fight, but adding untrained civilians in a modern warfare of missiles, tanks, aircrafts will have minimum effects on the results of the war, while it will only increase casualties. I hope Zelensky is not trying to use that as a strategy to deter Russian invasions. The international covenant on civil and political rights guarantees freedom of thoughts, conscience, and religion or belief. This means that if a person's conscience, religions, or beliefs conflict with the obligation to use lethal force against other people, the rights to conscience, objections to military service must be protected. Yes, that would increase the morale of the country and show the West the determination and create more hatred to the invaders. However, those are the lives of his own people that would be lost, families broken, and people lose their lost loved ones. Third question. Why is President Zelensky complaining the West is not helping him enough and joining the war? He is heard complaining in his recent video, quote, "You also want us to be slowly killed. This is also the responsibility of the world's politicians, Western leaders, today and forever," unquote. I have no insider information whether Western leaders have promised to keep Ukraine and its people safe if Russia invaded Ukraine. According to the news, he has done this after US President Joe Biden ruled out intervening militarily in Ukraine as it could lead to, quote, World War III, unquote. I think messages from both Moscow and Washington, D.C. are very clear. Not allowing Ukraine to join NATO is Putin's bottom line, and not joining the war in Ukraine is Joe Biden's bottom line. I don't know why Zelensky didn't get this message. Does he not care dragging the world, especially Europe, into the World War III for Ukraine's political agenda? There are so many independent countries bordering Russia that is prosperous and democracy, that is not full of corruption. Why can't Ukraine learn from them? This war has nothing to do with ideology or democracy. The world today is far from an equal and peaceful place. The big nations, small nations, they're actually in a multiplayer game filled with prison's dilemma and Nash equilibrium. Being a good political leader requires far more wisdom than just acting and giving speeches. In all occasions, a political leader should put his country and people first, not the abstract doctrines. There are some interesting posts circulating the social network. One of that compares Zelensky to another actor president, Ronald Reagan. The post says, Reagan has caused the falling of the Soviet Empire. Now, the other actor president has caused the collapse of Russia. Yes, Ronald Reagan was a great president and also a great philosopher and a guardian of liberty. But Reagan has certainly not brought a war to the United States and his people. Let's look at this video. What is the Ukrainians' expectation for President Zelensky? Fighting the corruption, not fighting a war with Russia.
Первая причина, конечно же, они хотели бы видеть в президентах такого человека, как Василий Голобородько, с такими, самое главное, моральными ценностями. А второе, конечно же, это ответ всему политическому истеблишменту.
Presidential election. It's only a few days until the presidential elections.
Yes.
Why are you doing this? Why are you spending
Why
your time
no?
on
This is my profession. Why not?
Okay.
This is my profession. Many.
Do you not have a campaign to be running?
Yes.
You're a busy man.
Yes.
You'll be even busier if you become president.
Who knows? I don't know. I've never been there, so maybe they have Saturday and Sundays. I don't know. We'll see.
For the Taiwanese viewer that is so inspired by the war at Ukraine, please especially be cautious of US promises. Yes, I am pro-democracy. I am anti-socialism. I want democracy in Taiwan to full blossom and be the great example for mainland China. However, as a small island, at this very critical geographic location between China and the US, I don't want Taiwan to have such a hero president. I advise Taiwanese people and President Tsai Ing-wen don't learn from Zelensky. He became a hero, but at the suffering of his country and people. No matter how the Western media has painted such a good picture to him, that is not our Chinese wisdom. Don't sacrifice one single people for any political agenda. It does not worth it. Distinguish over promises and friendship. The Biden administration has already showed in Ukraine, as the old Chinese idiom has said, watch the fire from the other bank of the river. For this war, there are so many unusual things happening. There is so much false information on both sides and the Western media. Let's keep thinking and challenging their narratives and find the truth. I will make more videos on Ukraine war. Please keep tuned.